Our next guest is a former U.S. ambassador to NATO, Ambassador Ivo Daalder. He now serves as president of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs and is also the author of The Empty Throne, America's Abdication of Global Leadership. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for being with us. Let's start here with the premise of your book and what we heard, that breaking news of the donation, your reaction to now the 500 million doses being donated by the U.S. as the world has been calling for the U.S. to be more generous with those vaccine doses.
Well, this is exactly what the United States used to do. Since the end of World War II, it has been a leader, a global leader around the world to try to use its unique capabilities, military, economic, political, social, cultural even, to rally the world behind us in order to deal with common challenges and common threats. And the pandemic, of course, was one of those threats that affected everyone in all places of the world. And what was lacking in 2020 was the American leadership. In fact, rather than leading at the World Health Organization or anywhere else, the United States withdrew from those organizations and focused only on the United States. Here, President Biden will be coming in his first foreign trip to the G7 with the announcement that he will bring 500 million. That's about 1/14 of the total dosage that is necessary to inoculate the entire world. That's a big number. 500 million dosage to poor countries. None too soon, but very well showing that the United States is back to lead and to be part of the global effort with our friends and allies to address the common challenges we face. First of all, the COVID pandemic.
Let's talk about what else is on his to-do list. Is it overstating it to say that number one is save democracy, or at least shore up democracy? I mean, allies are skittish after how they feel were treated for the past 4 years. And then, of course, at home, there's all sorts of challenges. We had an insurrection on the Capitol. So is this the argument that President Biden is going to be making to allies, that democracy is still strong?
It is the argument. It is what he thinks is necessary, and I think he's right about this, to deal with the challenge posed by, particularly by China and also by Russia. It is to rally our democratic allies. Now in Europe, he's done it already with meetings with the Japanese and the South Korean prime ministers in Washington before. Our allies in Europe, our allies in Asia, to work together to do two things. First, to come up with common solutions to common challenges, COVID, climate change, and indeed to protection of democracy and human rights. But secondly, to demonstrate to our people, to the people who live in democracies, that democracies are still capable of finding a way to address their needs and address their wants, that in fact they are more capable than a country like China to provide for the interests and the wants of the people, so that people, again, believe in democracy. And that means being clear at home that the defense of democracy in the United States is important, not just for the United States, but in order for us to achieve our objectives in competing with China and others around the world.
And of course, there is that summit with Vladimir Putin that is coming up on this trip. There's so much to discuss with Putin. What do you expect to come from that summit? Is this going to be a reset for the U.S. Again with Putin?
Well, what's interesting is that Joe Biden really is the first president since the end of the Cold War who came to office not committed to a reset or a fundamental change in relation with the Russian president. He is very clear about who Vladimir Putin is, whose goal is to disrupt a democracy around the world, as he did with ours in 2016, and he's done in other places as well, to divide our alliances. So he's going to come to Geneva after meetings in the G7, after meetings at NATO and with the European Union, united to demonstrate that the West and Europe and the United States are ready to defend their interests. And on that basis, to see if we can't address some of the common issues that we face. Most of all, the issue of strategic stability and nuclear arms control. It's an issue that the United States and Russia have been addressing now for many, many decades. And there is a common interest in making sure that nuclear weapons are controlled and levels of nuclear weapons are reduced on all sides. So there are ways to work with Putin on issues that matter, but at the same time, I suspect that President Biden will have some choice words when it comes to issues like cyber attacks and Ukraine, as well as threats to the security in Europe.
Ambassador Daalder, thank you very much for all the insight.
My pleasure.